Hello guys and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Ben. Today we're going to build Matata Shop and I've already created my project here. I have my assets folder which will contain the images, and I have created two more files which is which contains my app.js and my app.css, then my index.php which is going to be my entry point. So let's code Matata a good shop that allows payment by M-Pesa. So I'm going to start using the wrong template. Great, so let's go to HTML here. Let's create a HTML5 boilerplate like that. Let's change the title to Matata Shop. Just as usual, we have our bootstrap classes here. So inside a container, so div.container, and then we'll need to include two things. Let me have my link and bring in my CSS. Right now it's empty, but let's add it. Assets / app.css. Also my JavaScript, just script, and it's inside assets app.js. Then we need to bring in bootstraps. I'll just paste it here, and here down we'll have jQuery and bootstrap bundle. So I have jQuery and bootstrap. I'm going to use jQuery in this, but you can maybe use this one. You can use any template that you need. I'll also bring in the header. This is not important for me to code it, but let me just bring it in. Then we're going to have our products show right here, and I'll just bring in a div that will have or will contain our products. And inside our app.js, I'm not going to use the database this time, but what I'm doing here you can as well implement in maybe in a database. So I'll declare an app object here, which is where I'm going to have my products. Then I'll have my jQuery, further 4 frameworks here. We'll use it as well. Then I'm going to declare my products here. So const app products is an array. I'll delete this const. No need of declaring it again. Perfect. And then I'll paste in the products that I have already. So paste it there. So you have the product name, description, price, and all that. Then inside our jQuery, once the script has loaded, we are going to display the products inside our products div. So load our products here, but before that we need to loop through all the products. So do app.forEach, and here we'll have our product, and again here I'll copy paste template that I have for bootstrap. So I'll append, and I'll bring in the template. Which is going to be there. Let me indent it and explain it now. So here we have our product.image. If we hover over that product, you'll see the properties that are required, which is the image, we have name, description, price, and the product ID. This is a method that we'll write that will be adding the product to cart. And now if you hover there, you'll see the properties that we have in that object. Then let's now run this and see whether we load our products. So let me run this and then open that, run it. We have Matata Shop, nothing is showing. Let me look what's the problem. Products there. I think the problem is my internet. Let me check. Everything here looks okay. Go to my internet and check whether we are loading these and not. So let me connect to the internet. Great. Now let's reload this, and Matata products have showed up. So we have everything here. So we have the product, price, and all that. And let's now proceed. We're going to add the product to cart. So if you click that on, you see we have an error. So let's create that method. I'm going to copy this, and up here I'm going to create app.add-to-cart, which is going to be a function that will have two parameters, that is the event and the ID of the product. So we'll use the event to prevent the reloading of the page every time someone adds an item to cart. Second, we'll find a product with that ID and add it to cart. So product with ID supplied, so we'll do const product is equals to app.products dot find, then here we'll have product is product.id. If they match, then we pick that product and add it to the cart. The next step is we create our cart, and our cart will be on local storage because we're not using database. I don't want to use database here, but in production environments you can use maybe a database. So I'm going to use local storage. So I'm going to do let cart. First of all, we'll check whether our local storage has any item. So I'll get to check if there is any cart. If there is, or if there isn't right now, first of all, we declare it to be a null array or an empty array. And then, let's handle it differently. So if nothing there, we'll add the quantity. So we'll have, say, product.quantity is 1, and then we'll push this to our local storage. So this is JSON.stringify and cart. But before that, we also need to add the item to cart. So let's add it. So push the product inside the cart. So add the product to cart. So this is going to be cart.push product. Something else is if we have products of the same ID, we would rather have them grouped and just increase the quantity. So let's just do that here. First of all, we'll check if we already have the same product. So yeah, we'll say or let item be cart.find item, where item ID is ID that we've been supplied with, and if it's there, if item already exists in the cart, what we'll do, we'll just increase the quantity of the item. So item.quantity, then you increment it by 1. Else, that's when we are adding the product for the first time in the cart, so the quantity will be 1, like that. Formatting a little. Great. And let's also console log that the product has been added to the cart. So product. So for those who are good in maybe React or something, or front end, maybe you can just show maybe a toast or an alert that shows that the product has been added to the cart. So in our case, we're just going to console.log that the product has been added to cart. So as usual, prevent, find the product, get the cart, find if the product exists, add it to cart, and then show the user that indeed the product has been added. So let's reload this and we click add to cart. I have a problem here. I think I didn't put the name of the string here. So this is cart. So go back, reload, and then add to cart and see product 2 has been added. So we go to application, local storage, and you'll see have that one. We go on quantity, add the same product. Say we've incremented the quantity, do the same. For that one is new, keep adding. I've added 10 times. So a new product, quantity is 1. And basically, that's how you add products to cart. So the next part, now that we have added our products to cart, it is time for us now to add the button here that will be able to show us the items. Can show the items in the cart as well as show the total price that the individual is supposed to pay. So what I'm going to do is to add the button just on our HTML here. I'm going to add our button here, and I've already written the code, and I'll explain part of it. So I'll copy my HTML button here, and for those you who want to maybe use React to do the same, or Vue.js and all that, it's just the same. That's why I'm using a lot of JavaScript, because I want to understand that there are going to be a lot of people who will want to maybe implement this using a different front-end framework. So here we have a model that we'll implement later, and this model will be the one that will show the checkout. But what I'm interested in is this button right now, and this button, if we just go back to our front end and reload it, this button will show at the end of the page. But what I want to do is I want this button to float right here, so that we can, when we click add to cart, we update this button cost price here, and we can click on this button and check out eventually. So right now when we click it, nothing, we just get an error on our console. But let's now add the CSS to make it float. And back to our code, we had our app.css, which was here, which had nothing, and this one I'm going to add my floating element CSS. So to do that, I'm going to add a very small class, just a single one that will fix it at the bottom, just like that. And now when we go back here and reload this, see the button now is floating, and because it's obstructing other or is hiding other buttons, that's something maybe we can implement later, because we are not going just to test everything, we'll just be testing using this one for the 1 shilling. So now that we have this, let's now add the functionality of updating this code every time a product is added in the cart. So I'm going back to my code. We'll go to the button, we'll grab the ID. So as you can see, this button has two sections. The first section is where we have the text, and then we have a span, and this span has an ID, and this ID is cart value. So we're going to grab this, because this is what we're going to be updating, because we want to update the price here. So I'm going back to my app.js, then I'll create another method. Let me just close this, write another method, app.update cart button, and this is going to, I'm going to just grab it normally. So we'll count cart button, it's going to be document.getElement by ID. We can also use jQuery, but I tend to like mixing the two. So document.getElement by ID, and what you want to do is to grab that ID. Awesome. Next, we want now to get the cart, the items in the cart. So I'll just say cart items. So it's, I can either put a comma here, then just proceed. Cart items going to be json.parse, and what I'm going to have here is local storage .get item, and what I want to get is the cart. So we've been able to grab the cart. Next, I want to declare a total. So I'll say let total be equal to 0. That is the total value in the cart. And what I want to do is to sum everything in the cart. So as long as the cart is not equal to null, so I'll say if cart items is not equal to null, what am I going to do? I'm going to do just can add, normally do just do the sum, but just do like this. So cart items, I'm going to use that for each, and he will have the item, and we'll have total, which is equals to actually this, we're just going to add every item that we have. And now this is where another thing comes in. Remember, we have quantity on each cart item, so we're going to have item dot price, which is the first thing, then we multiply this by item quantity, so item dot quantity. that way we are going to get our total. So I'm going back here, and now that we have that, I want to update now the cut button. So I'll say cut button inner HTML is going to be my total, like that. And something else, when we load this page, we want already to grab whatever we have in the cart and show it on the button. So I'll just do app.init, and this is where we're going to run our init methods that we need to execute every time the page loads. So I'm going to have that, and here I'm just going to call the app.update cart button method, like that. So every time we reload our page, we'll have the total already showing. So let's test it out. Do we have an item in the cart? Yeah, we have so many. Okay, reload it again. So let's see whether they have an error anywhere. Nowhere. So let's try and add. So add an item. Yeah. Okay, yeah, sure, we have a problem. The problem is we need again to call this every time we add an item, and we have updated the cart. So once you add an item, we want to call that method. So if there's an error, now we'll get it from this part. So let me reload this and add to cart. Now you can see this is working. I don't know why the init, oh right, yeah, I understood. The init is not working because we've not initialized these on page load. So we'll go to where our jQuery is, and once jQuery loads, let's initialize that one. Great. So we reload that one now, and as you can see, every time we reload, we grab the cart items, and if we keep adding items now, we'll still we're now updating the button in real time. Great. And we can maybe, instead of showing this console.log here, we can maybe show a very nice toast that item has been added in the cart, but that is the work for front-end developers, yeah, the ninjas in the house. Great. Yeah, so let's now look at the second step, whereby if someone clicks this button, we want to show a model here, and this model will have a table, and it will have also an entry for phone number. In normal scenarios, you wouldn't implement something like that. It would maybe redirect to a different page where someone would have to maybe sign up or log into the account, provide maybe other more details, and then now pay, so that now you can capture all that process. But because this is just a tutorial, so you can understand how maybe the whole M-Pesa process works, especially STK, so I'm just going to skip the normal flow, and this is the flow you're going to adopt. You click cart here, shows the model with the items. You can adjust the quantity, remove an item from the cart, enter your phone number, pay, everything is validated real time here, and we are done. So let's assume Matata doesn't want all those processes because of maybe even his education level and how simple he wants his shop to be. So let's just now go to the next step. We want to indicate or to show a model here, one on click, and that model is what is going to have now all the remaining part. Great. So the next step, as we've said, is to add our model. So I already have the model with me, so I'll just copy it and bring it here. We'll walk through it together. So I'll go inside my index, and I'll just use it inside or below my scripts here. So we'll have this model. The ID will be cut model here. Remember, we're targeting this model with this. So cut model, we've put you cannot dismiss this model. This model. So by any mistake, you cannot, unless you click it or click close. The next thing, we have a table here, which is very important, and this table is where we're going to show the item index in the cart. We're going to have also the item name, the quantity, and the amount. We can also have the item price, so that now we'll know what this amount comes from. So we'll just add one more thing and say this is at price. Maybe just put an at there. So then we have our body here, and this is now very important because we have now our cart items. which is why we're going to load now the whole rows from the items in our cart already. And then we have our footer, table footer, which will have our cart total. And again, as you can see, I have an ID of cart total, and this cart total is what I'm going to again show the same value that we have on our cart button here. So to do that, let me just grab this, duplicate it, and here we'll have, let me call it my checkout button. And this checkout button is going to be an ID of cart total, cart total like that, and this is going to be, I'm not sure whether it's possible to do that, but let me just do this, duplicate this and have it here. Great. Now if we reload this, we have an error, unexpected const. Let me see where that is. Probably is because of this. So let me remove this one because we are using continuous declarations here. So we just go reload it. Everything now works fine. When you click this, we have our model, and our total, as you can see, is the same total that we have here. So if I keep adding products, we have 459, which is the same total as we have down there. The only thing we're not showing is we're not rendering the products in the cart. So we're going to write that method and load the products again to the cart, right? So what we want to do is we don't want to write a specific method for it. We want to show it only when we want to show or to get the items when we load the bootstrap model. Yeah, so I'm going to do I'm going to grab the model, so it's going to be cart model, that's the name I had given it, and we'll use the bootstrap method ps, which is show bootstrap model. So this indicates that it has already loaded, or it is being shown. And what we're going to do now here is we're going to grab the items again in the cart. So I'm going to declare my cart here. So cart is json.parse. I'm going to have local storage get item, and what we're going to grab here is the cart. So now we have our items. The next thing is to make sure that the items, we declare the item rows, right? So just item rows is going to be an empty string like that. Great. Then we'll just check if our cart is null. Cart is not equal to null. So if the cart is not equal to null, now this way again we can just loop through the cart and create our table. So just do cart.map or .for each, and here we'll have our item. Let's call it item. So once we have our item there, now we can have our item rows. Remember that we had declared it, item rows, which is going to be just going to keep appending this data there. So we're going to have that one, and now we have our rows. So we'll have our table row. So this is going to be the first row, or any row for that matter. Then we're going to have our TDs. TDs, we are table data. So I'm going to have TD, and I'm going to just write and duplicate it 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it 4, 5? Let's go to our HTML and confirm. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great, we have 5. So this is 5. I want also to give it a class because there'll be things that will be modifying here, and something else I need to add here is the item and its index. Very important. So The reason why I have put this on here is because I want to have this class, because at the end of the day we want to remove this item from the cart. We'll see the logic when we reach there, but let me just have the class as item ID. Once that is done there, the other thing that we need now is the index, which is very interesting. So here we're going to have the index, and since all arrays start from index 0, we don't want to show a customer that we have an item at 0 on the cart, so we want to do +1. Next thing we need is the item name, so I'll say item.name. The next thing that we want here is item.quantity, so we're going to have item.quantity. Here we have item price, and lastly we have our total. I think I had put so many, so we have our total here, and now our total, we're going to calculate it real time. So it's going to be item.quantity multiplied by item.price. So this is not necessary, we have it here. And now what we can do is once we have everything set, we can now append or add these items to our cart items. So I'm going to copy this, and using jQuery, our good friend, I'm going just to do cart items, then we're going to just pass HTML of our item rows like that. So let's test this whether we have done something so far. So reload it, click there, and now good, we have our items just flowing very nicely here. The total is at the wrong position, we need it to be somewhere here. So I'll go to my code, and I'll go to my total here, just give it correspond. I want to maybe occupy 2. Item name, I want it to occupy, this one is the one that can be big, so that can be 2, this can be 1. So let's see whether we've done something. So the product quantity and all that, I can also just add, let's say 2, see how it happens. But anyway, that's just a very small minor thing that does not have to worry us at all. And actually that one is supposed to be one of our total here. Great, so this is going to be called span form. Sorry, I was updating the wrong place. Perfect, so we have this space and then our total down here. Great, the next thing is to add this functionality so that we can be able to add or remove items in the cart. So let's first of all make this space editable. Great, now that we have this, so we said we want to add this to be an input, so I'm going to go back to my code here, and where we have the quantity, I want to change this to be an input, so I'm going to have a small input form here. With the name of quantity, value is going to be our quantity, and we have a type. Let's force this to be a number, like that. And now for us to be able to grab the information that is there, we need to write a method that will give us this value every time something happens. And so to do that, I'll go to increase, and I'll add another method here. So I'll say on change, because I want to grab every time it changes. So yeah, on change I want to do update quantity. So we'll just do update quantity. We don't have this method yet, and what we want to do here, we want to pass the event, and then we want to pass the item price. So I'll just do item.price, and again I want to pass the item ID. So I'll just do again item.id, and I'll send this to my let me first of all copy this. So what we want to do is every time we click, we change anything inside here, the quantity, we fire an on change event and we dispatch it here. Then this will grab it and then update the quantity real time and update the cart and everything that is there, right? So we'll go back up here as usual. So let me again fold this, and here we have that method, and we have three things. We have the event, we have the price, and we have the ID that we've passed from our HTML element. Great. Now let's grab the quantity. So const quantity is going to be event. We just to grab it from event.target. Value. Those who are doing React, this is a common thing that you are working with, you can see. Then to get our, or to update our price, we can just do our item ID. So let me just go back here. Let's just examine it again, because we're updating the quantity. So we want to play around with this total, right? So this total is going to give this an ID. So let me give this an ID of the item ID. Great. So I'm going to give it the item ID. So it's going to do, the ID is going to be item.id. And what I want to do is I want to update this price again every time everything changes or this changes. So I'm going to have my ID here. So it's this and my ID, and every time that one changes I want to update it with it's going to be my sorry, it's going to be quantity, what we had grabbed up there, and multiply this, multiply by the price that we've brought in. So that is the first thing. So I'll go back here, reload this guy, and now we'll have our checkout. If we reduce the quantity, you can see we have now 0. We do the same and the price keep reducing. So this is happening real time, and you can reduce until everything is like that. Great. Now problem is this can go up to negative numbers, so we need again to fix that. Every time is 0, remove this item from the cart, and we remove this item from this checkout as well. Remember we had this row, each row has its own class name, right? And we can even inspect the class and see what the class is for each and every row. So like this is row ID 2, we have the next row is class 3, class 1, 6, and all that. This is unique for each element based on its ID. So once we update that one, we want to also update the quantity on the cart. So let me create some space here. So I'll get my cart. So cart, or let my cart be JSON.parse. It's going to be local storage.get item, and we're going to grab in the cart again. Now that we have the cart, we need to loop through each of them and update the quantity. So I'll just say cart.forEach, and once once we have that, we'll have the item here. And here we have our item dot quantity is equals to quantity. So in short, we have this quantity here, which is what we're updating in the to item in the cart here. And then once we have that, let's now update our cart. So local storage dot set item, and what we want to do is the cart, and what we're going to give it is JSON.stringify. I'm going to stringify our cart like that. So that means every time we are updating the quantity, we are as well also updating on the cart. One thing we need also to do is, let's go and just check. So we'll go here, take just one product like this one, which has quantity of 8. This is product ID 8. Which one is that one? I'm not sure which one is that. Let me see. Yeah, so I think it is this one, which is the first ID here. Sorry. Let me see. Yeah, it is this one for 7.5. So we click this, and for 7.5, which is this one, if we reduce this one, we're also reducing its quantity here. As you can see, it's 9 now. Reduce it, it's going to be 8, and keep reducing it. Now you get 7 and everything. So supposing you're wondering where I'm checking, I'm looking at my console here, right? So if we keep reducing, we'll be able to go up to maybe 1. That's okay. And we can again reduce it to 0, and we still have the item in the cart, although it has a 0 value. So what happens is, if we reload this one, we'll still have I think it's updating all the items. Yeah, it's updating all the items. So we have another problem there. We need to update the specific one, and the challenge I think here is I updated everything. So let's make sure that we're just updating our ID. So item.id is item, it's ID, which we were passing up there, and that's when we're just updating it. Sorry about that. Awesome. So we have now a problem, new one. So let me clear this cart. Now I believe we have fixed that problem. So our cart has just one item, which has been added 9 times. Click it, you reduce this one, you will have 8, and now we can just close that one and add as many other products as possible. So reducing this one does not affect any other, like that. As you can see, this is 0, but if we go to others, we still have these quantities 2, and this other quantity is 8. But now what I want to do is to make sure that every time the item is quantity is 0, we remove it from the cart, right? So I'm going to go back to my code. I can write another block down here, which will be okay. And what I'm going to do, I'll say if, I can write it here, if item dot quantity is equals to 0, and here we have several checks, because it can be 0, less than or equal to 0. So that way we'll make sure that we've removed it completely. Yeah. So here we'll do that. We'll say our cart is equals to our cart dot filter, and filter is used to remove the item completely. So it's going to be, or to just pull in the details that you want. So it's going to be item dot id is not equal to the ID. So that means if the quantity is 0, the item is already removed in the cart. Awesome. So let's reload this and go back. So this one will be there, but as you can see, we are not doing anything yet, right? So for us to remove it, but the item is no longer in the cart. If you can look at here, we have now 2 products only. So if we reload this one and go back, we don't have the item. So you can also remove this. So it's already not in the cart, but we still have it on our checkout here. So let's remove it on our checkout as well. So once the item has a quantity of 0, what we're going to do is we're going to again use our good friend jQuery, and we're going to look for a class that has the ID, and what we're going to do is to remove it. So come here, reload this, and you go back here and we start removing this. When we reach 0, the item is removed, but our amount still remains. So what we need to do here, because our total still shows 60, we need to call our update cart button here. So we'll just copy this and let's have it down here. Like that. So let's reload this. So our cart value is 0, add products, checkout 0. This changes to now 9.5, reduce it, remains to 2, and to do that is 1. And if you can look down here on our button, we still have 1. Now up to that, we are now say halfway done on the front end, the functionality and all that, and now we're going to do the back end. Here I'm going to walk you through the M-Pesa class that I've already written. I'll walk you through each part, and then I will start implementing now the M-Pesa payment part. Great, so let's proceed. So now that the front end is done, it's now time to introduce you to the bull of the day. So I'll first of all close all this and have my I'll open my API class here. What I want to do is to open these two, and I want to walk you through each and every part of this. So this is just a basic config file that I have, and here I'm just setting my time zone. Then I'm defining my consumer key and consumer secret, which you can obtain on your Daraja portal. For those who don't have, just log into Daraja, developer.safaricom.co.ke, and then you create an app, and make sure you check the M-Pesa Express or the M-Pesa, yeah, definitely the M-Pesa Express, so that this, what we're doing right now, will work. Again, we have two things that we set here. That is the environment, and this is going to be for sandbox. If you wanted maybe to take this project to production, we could maybe add a few settings that will help us to do that. But right now, this is going to be our environment. Then we have our SSL, which is true, set to true, because M-Pesa won't respond to us if we're using non-secure or an unsecured endpoint. Then we have our shortcode and our business shortcode. The reason why I have these two here is because there are people who have problems with tail numbers, and I wanted to just have these two here because they'll help us to know if it's a pay bill or a tail number. But in this case, because we're just on demo, we don't need actually just to have the two, we just need to have one, because this is a pay bill by default. Then we have a passkey, which again can be obtained on Daraja. Then the others is just basic to know whether we are on sandbox or live. Down here we have our timestamp, and we have our password, which we've encoded, which is a string of shortcode, passkey, and timestamp. Then we have our callback URL, and I'm going to use Grok because the ISP I'm using right now does not provide me with a public IP. So I'm going to use Grok, and I'm going to create this file directly on the root of my project. So I'll copy this first, bring it here and paste it. I'm not going to do anything for now. I'm just going to let it stay like that. Then this will be order ID, and I want maybe this is the magic about M-Pesa Express, is that you can use a different URL every time you're making a request. And so I want to grab each order with its own unique order ID and send and get a response together with that one, so it will be easier for me to know what exactly the account is being paid for. for those people who are using STK. We can use any other method. We can use maybe the merchant request ID, we can use the checkout request ID, but this will be the easiest for us. Yeah, great. After that, now we go now to the mother of all, the class, and here this is the class that I'm using for my M-Pesa requests. And what I've done is I've just reduced everything that or I've just reduced the whole M-Pesa API to this simple class here, and this will do probably everything. So what we first of all is going to do, we are going to set the defaults. So we have our consumer key, consumer secret on the headers, and we make them accessible to the whole class. That's why we have our consumer key, which are defined. On the other side, we have consumer secret. We set the headers. These are going to be used during basic authentication in order for us to get the access token. Then we have access token method here, which just returns the access token, and we'll look at that one. Then we have our request header, which will be sent together with other requests like C2B, B2C, STK request and all that, register URL, because it now carries the bearer token for authentication. So let's go to our consumer secret or access token. So the access token is just a normal method. We're using curl here. Some people use Guzzle, which is still okay, and others use other methods, which still fine as long as you get your access token. So here I'm just setting basic things. Remember our headers, they were on our constructor here. We want to return the transfer, we don't want the header information, and we are using the normal user password, because all basic authentications require you just username and password. So that's what we're going to do. So no need of maybe sending this as base64 encoded and all that. Then once we get the result, we decode it and we close the curl connection, and then we return the access token. If the consumer key and the consumer secret were wrong, which are these ones here, then this will not be obtained, and it will throw an error when you're trying to access token in a result if it's an object that does not have the access token. Great. The second part is this one. This one is just generic. You can change this to anything because it will work on both C2B, B2C. It will work on reverse transaction, anything. Yeah? The most important part is this one. This one now abstract the whole Daraja API. Actually, you just need this to consume the API. So what you'll just be doing is sending the endpoint that you want to consume, maybe register URL, and here you just pass the data. So in this case, we'll be passing the STK body, and we'll just pass the STK request, process request, and then we'll also pass the endpoint for query request when we are there, right? And then here, normal, we pass the endpoint that we've received on this side. Then we set the header that we had already on our constructor, which has the basic, the bearer token. Then we want to get the transfer. This is post, and this is the post field. This is going to be a JSON encoded string. Don't just send an array, right? Then after that, we close the connection, we execute it, and then we return the response. Actually, you need also to close this curl. Either way, we return now the response as raw as it is, and once we hit this method with the endpoint and the post data, we just return what this is going to give back to us, and we return that onto our endpoint, and then we consume it. That way, no need or nothing else is supposed to be done on this method. We can just use anything that you wish. So this wraps the whole M-Pesa API. Even if you want to write 1 million lines, no problem, but this is everything that you need in order to consume the M-Pesa API. Awesome. So now that we have our ground set, if you'll have any questions, you'll just leave it in the comment section. But that marks the beginning of now us consuming the M-Pesa API on our Matata shop. So I won't be talking so much about this, but we'll be referring to them once in a while when you want maybe to grab the class name, when you have an error or anything like that. But for now, we are done. So this is just the whole M-Pesa that you need. This is the M-Pesa configuration that you need, and now we'll remain with our endpoint again, from the front end to back end and all that communication.
So I'm again going to close this, and I'm going to open the things that I'm using a lot, which is our front end and its client JavaScript file here. And on this model, on the cut model here, which was down here, we have a button pay now. So we want now to start from here. Great, now that we have this, so we'll copy this and go to our app.js, then we'll inside our jQuery block, we're going to grab that button and attach an event listener to it. I'll just put some consistency here. Great. So you'll have on click. Yeah. So on click, we'll have maybe the event, and we don't need so much. You just need the event to prevent maybe it from reloading or something, or closing. So once you click pay now, you want to grab the phone number that you provided. So I'll say let phone be phone dot value, and we can as well validate the phone number. So if we say phone dot length is maybe less than 10, or phone dot length is not equal to 12. So this is for two scenarios. One is, let me just do, is not equal to 10, or is not equal to 12. So scenario of where a user enters 254 and the other one enters just 07. So if that is the case, we want to add on our phone put, we want to add class, and the class that we'll add here is invalid. And then, so that we don't do anything or don't continue processing, we'll just say return. So we can test these, see whether the validation works. So add item to cart, then we'll just enter in a number here, and as you can see, the invalid class is affected. Okay, great. So else we proceed. We want to grab the items in the cart, so I'm going to say const cart. It's going to be json.pass. We'll have local storage dot get item, and we'll get our cart. This is what we're going to send eventually to the backend, but before we send it to the backend, I want to maybe find the total. So I want to send as well the total. It's always good to do some of these things in the backend. So we just need to send the item ID and the quantity, and then we'll calculate from backend, because people can manipulate what we have on the front end. So it's always good to send two things, but because of speed and everything else here, we need just to do very fast. So just do cut for each, and I'm going to have my item, I'm going to have total, which I've declared again. I'm going to be item dot price plus item dot quantity. So here you'll have total as 0. Sorry, 0. So see, let total be 0 there. Then now we have our total. So let's create the order that we want to send. So const order. And I need to be consistent in choosing these things. So let me just say let order be equal to, we have order which is going to be our cart. So we'll grab the cart items. the total price that this user is supposed to pay is going to be the total, and we'll pass again the phone number. So instead of maybe just repeating everything apart from the order, we can just let the remaining the others stay like that. There is no harm. Next, we want to make an asynchronous request to our endpoint or our backend, where I want now to make a payment. So I'm going to change this and add an async, so that here I'll use my fetch with await and all that. So I'm going to do const let me call it response is equals to await, and this is going to be fetch, and I'll pass my endpoint. So I'll do API, let me do API slash STK.php, and we have the method going to be post, and after this post we have our headers, just application stroke JSON, no need, but let's just pass it. So this is going to have content type application stroke JSON. We might also expect JSON back, so if we need to explicitly indicate that we need JSON back, we can maybe add accept here, say accept application JSON. After that, we'll do the body. This is going to be JSON.stringify, and we're going to stringify our order. That's what we're going to send to our backend. Next, we'll check whether we'll have a status on our response. So check if status is equals to 200, meaning we've been able to reach our endpoint. If not, if status is not 200, let's have an error. Maybe we can just show error, and you can have maybe HTML, which will be a text, the class of alert maybe danger, and here we can maybe say the error is going to be response.status text. So let's add this class to our model so it is able to be seen by the customer here. It's not advisable, but let's just have it. And we have ID going to be error. So right now we have 404 error. So I'll just try. We have a syntax error. This on line 97. I think I've done something wrong. Let me see. So I have a jQuery that defines our model here with the total. No problem. Okay, pay now. So we have font, we have font length, order, total. Let me just change this to, because we have several totals, so I'm not sure what is causing what. Let me reload and see. Property of null. The error I'm getting is I'm setting checkout button null. So let's go back. Red cut button. This is what I'm getting the error from. So let me document it so I can find out what I'm getting here, because I must be missing something. Let me add this. So we have a problem exactly, and that is the problem I wanted to find out. So checkout button. We can add something here. Say if that one just do document.cut.in HTML. Then remove this one from here, so that we clear that error. So check out, we have a problem. Problem is brought about by this guy, so we need first of all to check. No, that is not the problem. We've interfered with the bootstrap model, I think so. Yes, this is the problem here. So let's go back and then comment this. I think now everything should flow. Perfect. So if you click this, you get an error. If you pay again, you still have this error. Let me go to my network and see that you made the request. Didn't. So we have a small error here. So if phone dot length, let me see whether I called it phone. So enter phone number, ID is phone. So this phone dot value, phone dot length is not equal to 10, and phone dot length is not equal to 12, or let's say this is going to be less than 10. Let's see. Okay, so this validation I'm going to just pause it for now. I normally have my own npm library that helps me in validating phone numbers, so it's also available. You can go to my GitHub and check for one for PHP and the other one for HTML. I mean for Node.js, or it's an npm package. So for now we'll just ignore that one for the sake of time. Then go here, put my number, send it. We're not sending this request, so I'm not sure why. So it's pay now, prevent default. So on click, need a prevent default. So we have status here. I don't think this is the problem. So console.log anything. Load this. Go to checkout. Yeah, nothing is happening here because I have a problem with total. And this is the total here. Okay, so reload that guy. Go back here into the phone number. You have an error for not found, and now you have the status text showing up here. So this is not good. You can handle it in a different way, but for the sake of this video, let's just show it. Next, we need now to write our our STK class. I mean method in our file inside our API. Create our STK, and if we do PHP just like that, we go back and resend this, we'll get that we had 200. So let's try that again, and no error this time, so you can see anything. Great, now we have that one. So the next step is now to write the STK method that will now give us a push on our phone so that we can make the payment. Great. So if we go to our developer.safaricom.co.ke, then you click simulate. What I want you to look at is this data here. So this is what we're going to like reconstruct. So I'm going to I'm not sure I can be able to do anything here. Let me just click here, select, and just simulate. What I want is to copy specifically this payload. I'm going to look for PHP on this side, then we'll just copy this one. It's not necessary to do all that, but let's just do it. So here I'm going to have my payload, and I'm going to say it's going to be an array. I'll paste that data there, and here I'm going to maybe change it. Trying to avoid this. I'll delete this one. Remember, we already have our password, so I'll just bring in the password and I'll show you where we had it. We have our business shortcode, which is what I'm going to use here. And as well, I'm going to use it here. Transaction type is customer pay bill online, no problem with that one. Amount, I'm going to get it from a different place. Our timestamp is we already have it, so I'm going just to bring the timestamp there. The phone number, no problem with that. I'm going to remove it. And our callback URL is different. So here we're going to have our callback as well, and I'm not sure that it's let me see. So inside our config, we had all these settings, right? We had our business shortcode, we have consumer key, consumer secret, and we have our timestamp, password, and we have our callback here. So this is what I'm going to copy here. And once we have this, we can also remove this. Let me remove things that I don't need, and we'll fill them together. These details, we are going to fill them together. Perfect. So amount. So here I'm going to require our class. So I'm going to require maybe once a file It's opening. API.php, which is this file here. Then we will just declare the class or instantiate it. So I'll say API is equals to new API, like that. Then now we have access to everything that we had declared on the other side. The next thing I want to do is to generate a unique order ID. And I'm not going to focus so much on how complex and how random it's going to be. So I'm just going to use the inbuilt PHP method for generating order ID. And remember, here we had said we'll be adding our order ID. So I'm just going to do our order, let me see it, order ID to avoid confusion. So we have our endpoint here, which will have our order ID. Next, we have our phone number. Now, let's grab what we're bringing in from the other side. So we'll have our order data. It's going to be forget contents. And here we're going to do PHP input. And can just say our order is going to be just some decode order data. Perfect. Now we can access the amount, which is the total. So just do order total. Now this is a challenge because sometimes we might get a user might be paying something like 7.5. This will result in an error in Safaricom API because they don't accept floating point numbers. So we need to manipulate this just a little. So I'm going to pass another method here that will round it off to the nearest whole number. So I'm going to do sale amount, and here I'm just going to say amount. And then this is the phone, so we already have it. So this is going to be phone. Okay, it's order phone. Then same case as here. Save that. Account reference, here we can just pass the order ID. No problem with that. Which is the order ID. And now we have our payload already set. Next, I need to grab the URL that we'll need to send. So I'll just do this, go to my developer dashboard, then highlight this. Okay, now to do that, let me just bring it from another script. And here we don't need this state, already we know we have it, but let's just say sandbox. Awesome. Now the remaining part is just to get the response back, and to do this we need to send this request to our API class, to our method of lipa na M-Pesa. Let me see how we call it. It's going to be lipa na M-Pesa online. So we go back here. And that method goes there. They need the endpoint, which is the URL, and also they need an encoded string of our payload. Let me confirm. Great. So once we have that, now we can send it back to the customer. So echo and just send the response. So if we do this, we still have one issue with the phone number. Remember, if someone passes phone number as 07, it won't work. We'll get an error maybe let's see. So we go back here, let's reload this guy, and what I want to do, so that you can be able to understand the response very well, you just do const response, so it to be await response .json, so we can now process the order if we get status is 200. Then we can consolidate log instead of anything. Now let's log what we get back from M-Pesa, right? Great, so we reload this guy again, go to checkout, let me enter my phone number here. If we say pay, we're going to get an error. This error is coming from undefined function unique UID. It's supposed to be unique ID, like that. Let's repeat. 200, and as you can see, we now get invalid phone number. So even if we go to our console here, we'll get our phone number is invalid. So we needed to format this phone number to 254, so I'm going to change this to 254, and if I make that request, we're going to get our STK request is successful. So I get the STK push on my phone. I'm not going to do anything for now. I'm going to cancel it because there are a few things we have not yet done. And one of those things is firing our grok so that we can update our endpoint and be able to capture this detail. So I'm going to start my grok. So I'll run grok http 8000 because I'm serving it from port 8000. I'll grab the https route and I'm going to update it on my config. I'll replace this one. And now, right now we don't have any call request here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to request another payment, and we have invalid access token. Let's try again. Works. I get an STK requests, and as you can see, nothing yet, so I'll cancel this so you can see our response to our endpoint. Nothing, so you have to be patient with this M-Pesa API. Sometimes send it again, request comes, cancel, nothing still. Do you really change it? Supposed to come here. And nothing. Let's keep trying. Try one more time. Cancel. And we get it, right? So get 200 or request here. Probably saying we have cancelled the request. Now that is not everything. The next part now is we add the logic to process this order that comes on this side, and we proceed. Yeah. Okay, now that we've been able to see that we can make successful requests to M-Pesa, I wanted to make sure that every request that we make here, because we're not going to use the database in this regard, or in this tutorial, because we're not using the database, we're going to use a file system, and this is going to help us maybe finish this tutorial very fast. We still have like 3 more hydration breaks, so first we start with writing the order. So I want to write this order together with its response on a file. So I'm going to first of all create inside my API, I'm going to create a folder called orders. You'll see why. Then I need here to create or to access it. So I'll just say this is my order. So I'll just say order is equals to f open, and I'm going to use a certain technique just for this example. So one thing I'm going to do is to add the order ID here, and I'm going to say is .json. like that, and I want to append in case I want to write more data to it. Then I'll write it. I'll write to my order, and I'll write let me just do JSON encode and maybe data. Let me call it data because we don't have data. Then fclose our data file that we have already opened. Now let's construct this data object here. So I'll say data. I want it to contain two things, or three rather. Basically two. No need of adding the third element. So the first thing I want to do is to have the order ID, which is going to be my order ID. Second, I want to have my order data, so I'll have my order, which is going to be order, which is, I think we had it. Yeah, great. So this is just going to be the order. Lastly, we want to have our STK response. STK request, and this actually it's not request but request response. Sorry about the mix-up. So this is going to be the response. I want to save this whole file so that I can be able to know which order, what was the response, did it go through or not, and all that. And then because I'm going to save this inside my orders file, I'm going to do orders and that. Another thing is this order file might be you might not have the permissions to write to it. So sometimes I like just to put this before everything so I can have my read write if I have access to these commands. That way I don't have any error with writing and writing to that file. Alternatively, again, you can also not be having that one, so you can check if is dir like that, and you just pass in maybe orders, and if it does not exist you can mkdir and orders like that. Not a must, but good to have. Yeah, so mine already has those permissions, so let's make a request and see whether we're going to have an order file here with a .json file, JSON endpoint. So I'm going to request. We have an error, most likely is something I've missed here. Nothing. Okay, let's see what is wrong. Go to my network tab. This is the STK, and you have fclose parameter expects that one to be that. Oh, we closed the wrong one. Supposed to close the ORD, or he had already written something but it didn't close it. Fine, so let's again run it. So send it pending. We have a response back, unable to lock a subscriber. Let me cancel that transaction first. Again, go to make a payment. Let's go to our console. I have my requests in. Go to our orders and we'll see we have these two. So let me format that. And this is the one that had an issue with locking a subscriber because I had an open or inactive STK request. So this one was accepted for processing. Maybe what you can do is, instead of again passing this to that, you can maybe JSON decode that one. So we'll have an array instead. Actually, let's just put it on array like that. So let me delete these two quickly. And again, clear my console, make the request, and get unable to lock. My internet is having issues.
That's what I'm getting.
Okay, so let's reload this. Let's make the payment. Has come through. Go to our orders. Not sure which one now. It's this one. So now we have everything here. So what I want to do is, once we send this back, because we can be able to access it from here, we'll now create our endpoint, which is this one, because this is what M-Pesa is hitting directly. I'm going to grab my order ID, and I'll say this is going to be get order ID, then get the response Safaricom is giving us. So just call it data. It's going to be file get contents. And I want to get that. Then let's write this again to the same folder with orders. So I'm going to open this API orders. I'm going to order ID, then I'll say payment.json. So we'll be able to know this order has received a payment or not, or a response for payment. Then let's write it. So right here, then we'll have our data, then we close it. And what you can do, just return HTTP response code of 200. So the M-Pesa does not keep waiting for us to say success. Great. So I will have our orders and order ID, payment, JSON. So let me delete these three. Cancel any pending session that I have. Then make a payment again. Comes through. Let's go here. What I want to do is to cancel. So I'll cancel it. See whether M-Pesa will respond. No. No, it does not respond. We'll just try again. Let me delete this. I'm not sure why they sometimes don't respond or send responses, but it's frustrating sometimes. So send it. Cancel. Yeah, we have our response back, but I didn't. Right, here you go. So you have our requests, our response, and as you can see, we have our result description and result description and result code, which is this one. So we have our request here and our response, both on the same folder. Great. Now in the next after the next break, we'll now do the polling, which is now the remaining part, and the polling will be able to tell us, while still on this page, whether payment was successful or not, which will also mark the end of the video. And I'll avail this code immediately after this the last section to GitHub, so you can download, clone, and don't forget to start. When you download this code, don't forget to start the repo, or even follow me. There's no problem with following me for more great tips like this one. So I know we've taken a lot of time, but yeah, let me take a small hydration break, then we proceed. Wow, great. Now we've come a long
long way
to where we are. And this is now where we mark probably maybe the last second or the last video of the series. And today, or this videos particularly, we're going to focus on what we call polling. And what we'll do with polling is, once a payment is made here, we want to keep requesting M-Pesa for information whether this payment was successful or failed, or an error was encountered, right? Now, for polling, there are basically two things we're going to do, and we're going first of all to define the time that we're going to check. And since also the M-Pesa STK session or the USSD session for STK is around 180 seconds, we'll poll until maybe 180 seconds are done, and then we'll maybe now show timeout and not expect a payment for that merchant request ID or for the specific order ID. For this matter, we're going to define two methods of making the polling requests. One, we can poll what we have already on our database. So assuming this is our database, right? So we can keep polling on what the response was. Remember, we can just like map these two IDs together in our database, and assuming this is a database, we can keep polling our database until we get a response. Then we check what was maybe the result code and what was the result description. So we can poll our database, that's one. And the second, we can poll the M-Pesa gateway using what we call the STK query API, right? Where we send the checkout request ID and we get a response whether the payment was made or not. So this video is going to be divided into two. First, we'll use the database method, and I'll tell you the downside and the upside of both. And the second, we'll do using the checkout request ID, which we're going to use the query API. So it's going to be very simple to do that. And supposing we choose the one that will be reading our database, what will be the downside to that one? So because we'll be reading our database every 2 seconds, we're going to have so many read, and if you have maybe you're also tracking how many times reads and writes are happening on your database, and then you're going to have a lot of IO, because it will be like 90 for every payment request, right? Because we'll have checking every 2 seconds for 180 seconds. So that's going to be around 90 checks. If we do that and you have maybe 1 million requests, then you're going to have around 90 million requests for people who will be reading and reading, most likely writing from your database. So that's going to be an overkill. As well, it's going to have a negative impact on your server performance, right? We can also have the same polling directly from the M-Pesa gateway, a way in which maybe to reduce many requests or something like that. Then it will have an impact on your side. Again, if the internet for the customer is slow, it's going to have a poor user experience. And again, we'll still load our server with all those requests because they have to go through our server. Then we send to Safaricom, we get the response, and then we respond to the customer and all that. So either way, we still have some considerable server load, especially if you have too many requests. But again, this is the best. And the good thing with the C2B API, there is no security, a lot of security concern when it comes to maybe, unless you expose your endpoints, they don't pose any security threat, even if you expose this data to the client, since once you secured your endpoints and it's a secret for you and your business, then that's no security problem. So let's now implement our first method of polling. And before we poll, I need to now first of all make sure that we declare a few things. One, we're going to poll after our request is successful here. And in order to make that polling successful, and we don't check the servers forever, we have to define a certain, I'll just call it interval. and this is going to be accessible. That's why I've declared it as var, because I want it to be accessible anywhere, so we don't have those errors of access and all that. Second thing, I want to get the order ID, so I'll define my order ID here. Remember that our order ID which was being returned STK, we had our order ID here, and everything that we're checking depends on that order ID here, right? So let me have my order ID there. Let me first of all close this so I can just remain with what I'm working on. Yeah, so we have our order ID. Great. Next, we need now to maybe write the logic for polling, right? And for that to happen, we need first of all to get the time. Let me also define it here. The time that we start to make the poll, right? So I'll say let start time to be new date dot get time, which is that. Then let again stop time. This is when we expect the STK to have timed out. So date get time, and what I'm expecting here is maybe I'll just put 25 seconds like that. No, not that, 25 seconds. Yeah, so we expect to start now, and then in the next 25 seconds we stop, we time out our request. And then after that, now let me have my order ID now here. Awesome. Next, I want to now code a callback that will help us in checking or polling, right? So we can maybe add it on our set interval. Remember, set interval requires two things. So I'll do maybe I'll say interval, so that it makes sense. Is equals to set interval, and I want to pass our callback here and the time that we want to do, which is going to be 2 seconds every time. So this callback is the one that is going to be checking. So I'll define the function callback. So const callback is equals to async, because we're making HTTP requests to other servers. So this callback, this set interval will immediately start executing, and it will run every 2 seconds. And the reason why we are using the interval is so that we can clear the interval when either time has elapsed, or 2, when we encounter an error or a success or anything like that. So here the first thing to do is to check the current time. So I'm going to do let now be new date dot get time, and first thing is to check if now is greater than stop time, and if that is the case, we want to clear the interval, and we'll pass now our interval. Once we clear it, we can alert the customer that session has timed out. Perfect. Now we exit that. No need of even proceeding. So timeout has been reached. Now timeout has not been reached. What do? We go now to the next step, which will be polling now from our server, right? So I'm going to do the first method, which is going to be const let me just say polling poll is equals to await fetch, and we're going to do inside our API orders, and here we have our order ID, like that. Then say payment.json. We don't need anything else. So if Paul has a result of, or if Paul.status is 404, meaning no response has been received, say 404, we just want to keep polling unless this is 200. So if Paul.status is 200, we want to pull in the data that we have. So I'll just do const Paul result, which is going to be underscore Paul. It's going to be await Paul.json. Then we can console.log our Paul as well. We can clear the timeout. So clear interval and pass the interval object there. If error is not anything or is greater than 400, so if Paul.status is greater than 400, let me say is greater than or equal to 500, meaning it's a 500 error, server busy and all that, just clear the interval. And the interval that we want to clear is the interval, and let's alert the customer that sorry, we encountered an error. Awesome. Now we have our callback, which is executing and is looking for this specific file, and let's now try it again. So let me see. Okay, let's do it. So reload this, check out. Let me reduce this to like 1 shilling. Then let's send it. So we're getting these errors because get is not found. Then we cancel it. Let's hope we'll find something. Oh, we also have a problem here. We have undefined, so we cannot get any result. So that is basically my order ID. Where is it? This order ID is supposed to be with this one. So did we send it back? No, we didn't. So let's send our data back. To be JSON and code data. So already our timeout has reached, so that's great. So reload this guy, go to payment 547649 and pay. We'll have request as candidate and we have everything. So let me cancel it. Still getting 404. This reason M-Pesa has not responded. So this is the only maybe problem that we'll be facing. Let's just wait for it to turn out. Great. Let's try to pay again. So we have a request. 2 seconds. 2 seconds. Cancel. Great. So we have a response from M-Pesa, and now we have this other guy responded with what we had. So as you can see, we have request cancelled by user. So let's now start catching these errors. So once we have response of 200, which is inside our app.js, which is here. So what I want to do is to grab the body, which is the same inside our poll, and we'll start checking if inside these, let's see, so inside body STK callback, if body dot STK callback dot result code, right? So result code says equal to what they provided here is 1032. So we'll alert with body dot STK callback dot result desk. So let's see whether we have it. Awesome. Still have the same for result code is 0, meaning it is successful. So we'll do alert, and then we can now reload the page or redirect the user to another place. We'll keep on checking for the different types of errors as well as clear the interval for both. So I'll go back and clear this one. Go back to make the payment. So let's pay. I have my STK request. Let me cancel it. So let me first of all make sure that M-Pesa is going to respond. Yeah, it has responded, and as you can see, we have now request cancelled by the user. Let me put a very big amount that I don't have. I'm not sure that it's going to request. Let's see. So we can as well see the error that we're going to get. So we have missing, and I'm pretty sure that I will not responded to. Yeah, I'm so sure that I will not be responded to. So let me reduce this to like just 1,000. I don't think I have 1,000 on my phone. Okay, let me see. Session timeout. Yeah, so that one responded. Actually, here we can just say if it's not equal to 0. So we can just handle the whole of it at once. So let me reload this. Go here. And make that payment. So I don't have enough money, I know, so it should have failed in the first attempt, as you can see. So that one has failed, so the balance is insufficient for that request. If I put 1, pay now, I have a request, I want to cancel it. Let's wait. Yeah, they are not responding, so we'll wait for a timeout. and it has timed out. Great. Let's send it again. Probably this time they'll respond. Comes back. I'm going to cancel. And request has been cancelled by the user. So I'll close this and make the payment. So I'm going to enter my PIN. Responding. Okay, let's wait for a timeout again. I just made the payment, but they're not sending that request, so no problem. So pay again. Rule limited. This is because I've made same amount of payment. So I'm getting that error, rule limited, because the payment of the same amount has been made in the last few seconds. I'm going to pay 2 shillings. Pay now. Request is processed successful. When I click this on, it will reload, maybe redirect user to another place. Yeah, so that marks again the end of the first part, where we are using our local maybe details to check for payment, if it was successful or not. And as you can see, M-Pesa does not respond all the time to the STK requests a lot of the time, so I cannot comment about it so much. I don't control it, we don't have access to anything there, so my comment would be I rarely use STK as much because of its reliability. Sometimes it can make you not work for the whole day if you're depending on STK purely, but it's a good thing. Allows one-click checkout, as you have seen, and it's one of the best. Maybe just stability is the issue. So we meet in our last part, where we'll be looking at now making those requests directly through the M-Pesa servers, and we'll still use the same logic. The only thing we're going to do this time is, instead of using our local file system, which was this one, we'll create a different way of maybe polling, and we'll just summarize the whole video at that point. So thank you very much for watching, and let's meet again in our next part after this small hydration break. Hello and welcome back. Now what we did last time was to poll using our local data that we had, and we assumed that this one is our database, or this is our database, and we did a nice polling, smooth requests, and we got our answers and everything the way we were expecting. Today's polling is going to be based, or now, let me use now because the videos are produced on the same day. So now this other one is going to be based on express query, and we need to send business shortcode, password, timestamp, and the checkout request ID. So to do that, I'm going to go back to my code, and inside my API I'm going to create maybe a file called poll or polling.php. As well, this polling.php contains close to the same data that we have on our STK here. So what I'm going to do first of all is to just grab these two, paste them here. Then, as we've seen, we need business, so let me create a payload here so we can understand each other. So we have an array, this one, and here we're going to have our business shortcode, our password, timestamp, and checkout request ID. So I'm going to copy these three because they're still being used here, and then what I need will be the checkout request ID. Sometimes you'll see me copying this data, as you can see, because this is where most of the people, especially when doing Daraja API, they miss, because they write their own stuff. They don't write maybe checkout request ID with camel case or snake case, whatever it is. They don't. So if you write your own stuff here, that is automatically going to be an error. So I'm going just to say this is going to be an order, and here we'll say checkout ID. I'm just going to call it checkout ID, and we don't have this order yet, so let's bring it in. So we'll send this either as a post or a get. I think it would be better if I just, instead of doing that, let me just send it in terms as a get request, right? So do this and send it on our request together. So just do get and just do ID. Just call it ID. You'll understand in a very short time. The next thing we need is exactly what we have here. We have our URL, we have our response. I'm going to just copy these two, but I'll modify something. Maybe I'm becoming lazy by copying things that are looking the same. So this is going to be different, and we're going to copy it from here. So it's STK query. So let's modify this URL. Query, awesome. And everything else remains the same. Then we need to just return this to user. So just do echo and just response like that. Okay. And every time we send this request, we'll console.log the response. So something will change on this, and what I want to do first of all is just console.log this, or rather instead of even console logging it, if we go to our STK, we had our STK res JSON, which we can access it here. So what you can do, it's not inside polling, it's inside this part. So you can say let STK res to be our response.stk res. What we want is the checkout request ID. So I'm going just to copy exactly what we have here, because that's what M-Pesa is going to return. And if you do this without maybe getting to know whether there was an error or not, then you'll also have another problem with accessing this one. Then I'm going to comment this one, and I'm going to have this is, let me just say this is method 1. Let's go to method 2, and again say polling, and call this polling. It's going to be fetch, and we'll do our fetch to our API method, and we have our polling endpoint, and we'll have our ID, remember, and we'll pass in not our checkout request ID, but rather our STK res that we had grabbed our checkout request ID here. So it will go there, no problem. Again, check if it was an error. So if we had an error there, it's greater than or equal to 500. We do the normal stuff. Okay, we already had it here. I think I should just call it the same name so we don't have multiple. Let's just have it the same way so we can have this. So but if polling.status is 200, Now I want you to see something here. So this will always return 200. But now, let's call this response. It goes to await poll, not JSON. This is supposed to be poll, not polling. So it's going to be poll.json. So here, the only thing that will now matter is the result code. And I want you to see every time we make a request for polling, we'll get a different either transactions processing or something like that. So let's just do this. Okay, so let's start by checking that we needed an ID here. That's okay. Everything is okay and perfect. So let's go ahead. Let's go here and let's make a payment. Okay, so requests. I'll go here. We have error 404, which is not supposed to be the case. All right, I didn't reload this. Yeah, so let me cancel it first. Cancelled by user. That's okay. Let me reload this because we've changed to the JavaScript part. I'll do that. Then make the payment. So once we make that payment, you see this one, and if you go here, we're not console logging it. Why? Okay, let's click this and see what we have here. We have request or transaction is being processed, right? And it will time out after a few requests. And as you can see, I've timed it out. I've not paid. So let me cancel that for now. So I want to be able to see this data that is being sent back inside our, as we want here. So I'm going to go back, reload this, and I have a small bug somewhere here, a JavaScript bug, where we are calculating the cut total here. So we need to do pass int to be the quantity. Maybe also pass int here. So all right, I've understood. I wasn't waiting. I was just making that request. Malenge. So let's do this. Let me cancel this one, make a request. Perfect. We should start seeing yes. As you can see, I cancel this one and it's been accepted. Okay, that is wrong. We should have result desk, which I think is what describes what happened. Instead of description, let's have result desk. That one tells us exactly what is happening. So again, reload that and we make the payment and we do the polling. So we send it. I'm not going to pay, I'm going to cancel. And request has been cancelled by the user. I'm going to request again and this time I'll pay. And request is processed successful. If I do that, it reloads. So we have now added polling on our requests, and we have two methods that we've done that with. So basically we have built Matata a shop in actually like 2 hours. And now it's time for me to welcome the gurus of front-end, someone like Waroi and Ben. Now to extend it further, maybe do a greater UI for people, and we see how this project turns out. Next, we'll look for another interesting project and do. Probably I'll go for WordPress, maybe in the next video. We'll do a video or a complete tutorial on how to do a WordPress plugin for M-Pesa. Then we'll do the rest as time allows us. So if you have not subscribed, kindly consider subscribing right now. This code is already available on my GitHub, so head over to my GitHub and clone the project. Build an e-commerce based off from Kenya, and that other people can use, maybe in open source and all that. It will be very great if you guys can embrace this project and clone it and push your peers and make something great out of it. Let's do a community of Kenyan developers that love helping each other, right? And building each other up. So anyway, it's not in my position to do that. My position is just to teach you how to do these things, and let's meet in our next video. Hope you've liked the video. It has really taken me a lot of time, and I appreciate as well, and I feel good when I'm training you guys to do great stuff like this. So thank you very much for tuning in and for watching, and for your comments and feedback, and everything that you've done so far. Thank you very much. Let's meet now in our next series, and God bless you all.